Here's a question that breaks most people's brains. The Federal Reserve prints money, trillions of dollars. They create it out of nothing. Just numbers on a computer screen. No gold backing it, no assets backing it, no one deposited anything. They just create it. In 2020 and 2021, the Federal Reserve created $6 trillion. $6 trillion. Out of thin air, they didn't mine it, they didn't earn it. They didn't borrow it from anyone, they just made it appear on a computer. But here's the problem. Every dollar bill in your wallet says Federal Board of Governors sets policy, but the regional Federal Reserve banks, which are private, do the actual work. They create the money, they interact with banks, they hold the assets, and they're owned by private banks. Here's how it works. Every commercial bank that's part of the Federal Reserve System, which includes all the big banks, is required to buy shares in their regional Federal Reserve Bank. So JP Morgan Chase, because it's headquartered in New York, owns shares in the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Those shares pay a dividend, 6% per year, guaranteed, risk-free. No matter what happens, $500 billion that didn't exist 1 second earlier. They created it by typing numbers into a computer. So who actually owns the Federal Reserve? This is not a conspiracy theory. This is documented fact. You can look up the shareholders. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York, which is the most powerful of the 12 regional Fed banks, because it handles all the open market operations, is owned by member banks. The largest shareholders are JP Morgan Chase, Citibank, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Bank of America, and a handful of other major banks. These banks own a big portion of those interest payments go to the Federal Reserve. In 2023, the Federal Reserve held about $5 trillion in Treasury bonds on their balance sheet. At an average interest rate of around 2 to 3%, that's $100 to $150 billion in interest income per year. The Federal Reserve collects $100 to $150 billion per year in interest from the government on bonds they bought with money they created from nothing. What do they do with that money? First, they pay operating expenses, salaries, buildings, operations. The money supply would go to zero. There would be no money left in the economy, no dollars to pay workers, no dollars to buy goods, no dollars in bank accounts. The economy would collapse instantly. This is why the national debt has increased every single year since 1913, except for a brief period in the 1830s under Andrew Jackson before the Federal Reserve existed. The debt cannot decrease because the money supply cannot decrease without causing economic collapse. As the economy grows, you need more money in circulation. The only way to create more money in this system is for the government printed. They said United States note instead of Federal Reserve note. They were debt-free money created by the government, not the Fed. 5 months later, Kennedy was assassinated. Lyndon Johnson became president. One of his first acts was to halt the issuance of United States notes. The $4 billion that had been printed were quietly removed from circulation. We went back to Federal Reserve notes exclusively. Coincidence? Maybe. But every president who has seriously challenged the Federal Reserve's power has faced serious consequences. Abraham Lincoln